Today on Up Front, is the race for the White House now a close contest? And are Democrats starting to worry? I'll ask Hillary Clinton supporter, Wisconsin Senator Tammy Baldwin. Then, raising road revenue, the options an influential state lawmaker says are on the table. And the Wisconsin races that could help determine control of Congress, how the national view of them might be changing.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. We begin today with the race for the White House in a contest that at least appears to be tightening. Some national and swing state polls show a much closer contest now between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. A new poll from CNN last week, in fact, showed Trump leading by 2 points. Should Democrats be worried? We're talking about this and much more today with Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin. Senator, it's good to have you back on the program.
It's good to be back.
So are you worried at all about sort of the recent trend lines in this Trump-Clinton race?
Well, I think we always have to take these contests very seriously. Worry wouldn't be the word that I would use. If you look at what's happened in Wisconsin in hotly contested presidential years, we have always, in recent years, favored the Democratic candidate. And when I look at just how temperamentally unfit Donald Trump is to be commander-in-chief, to be president, I have confidence that performance won't be, there won't be an exception in this particular presidential year in the state of Wisconsin.
So you feel pretty good about Hillary Clinton's chances of winning Wisconsin this time around?
I do, but again, this is, these elections are not spectator sports. We have to all be participants. We have to spread the word, encourage others to vote. And I would say, especially in light of all the changes to voting laws in the state of Wisconsin, we're going to have to work very hard to do that.
You and other Democrats talk about whether Donald Trump has the temperament to be president. But I want to have you respond to what Republicans say about Hillary Clinton. In fact, what a lot of Americans say. The latest Marquette Law School poll, we asked people, does the word honest describe Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? 68% said it did not describe Hillary Clinton. So a couple questions on that. Do you, as someone who supports her, do you think she's honest?
I think that Hillary Clinton is honest. I trust her. And, you know, one of the things I talk about frequently when I talk about why I so strongly support her is, you know, to look at the very beginning, before there was any scrutiny or spotlight on her. What did Hillary Clinton choose to do with her life, with her law degree? She chose to help the poor. She chose to help organize for civil rights. She helped organize parents of children with disabilities to get the same educational opportunities as other children. She focused on children and families. And I think that speaks volumes for who she is today.
Do you think she's handled the email controversy well? Do you think her explanation has been adequate for people?
You know, she has said from the very beginning that it was a mistake, that she would never do it again, having learned what she learned. And I think that that is the approach, that's the honest approach there. The perpetual focus on this, you know, is for a purpose. The people who are raising it over and over again are intentionally trying to create doubts, create questions. But I think if you take a step back and look at what the Republican nominee Donald Trump and our nominee Hillary Clinton stand for, where they want to help move this country, there couldn't be a greater contrast. And the divisiveness and outrageous comments that come from Donald Trump, you know, it just have made me conclude that he is absolutely unfit to be president.
I want to talk about something you've been talking about a lot lately, and that's poverty. What do we do about poverty in this country? You and Senator Cory Booker have come out with a proposal that would I think we can safely say, attempt to increase transitional work opportunities, get people in the workforce, but also some changes to tax credits that could really help people who are not making a lot of money in this country. What could this kind of proposal, in your opinion, do for people who are living in poverty or near the poverty line?
You know, first I want to give credit where credit is due. This is a Wisconsin idea. This
Milwaukee
is
idea, isn't it?
born in Milwaukee idea from some incredibly thoughtful individuals who work at an organization that serves very low-income people, serves the poor, but also has a research arm and says what really works to help people be lifted out of poverty through the dignity of work. And it's a combination of sort of three major pillars, addressing stubborn unemployment and underemployment through transitional jobs programs, and then expanding two tax credits that recognize the dignity of work and make work pay, because we have too many people who actually work full-time or even greater than full-time and still fall in poverty because of low wages and the taxes that they have, the payroll taxes that they face.
So this is not a government handout. You say this is about the dignity of work and encouraging work.
Absolutely. And what it does is bring some very successful programs that have been tried with, maybe a few dozen or a few hundred people. It scales it up so we can really help alleviate poverty on a grander scale. In terms of the politics of it, each of the major pillars of this measure have received bipartisan support, both in the state of Wisconsin as well as across the country. There is Republican support for transitional jobs programs. There is Republican support for the earned income tax credit and the child tax credit, which makes a huge difference with child poverty. And that gives me hope that using these pillars that there's agreement around, that we can actually move something forward rather than simply talk about it without action.
Briefly, Speaker Ryan has talked about the issue of poverty. He may be coming at it a little differently than some of the Democrats, but you do feel there is something there that you could work together on in these kinds of proposals?
Absolutely. Again, moving from rhetoric to action is so important. He's actually the Speaker of the House right now, and there's a Republican majority in the House of Representatives. He's put together these ideas, introduce them, put a bill in the ring. I've put a bill in the ring. Let's have this discussion and move it forward. Don't say we're going to wait until after the presidential election. Let's start talking about it now and moving on this now.
Senator Tammy Baldwin is a Democrat from Dane County. It's good to have you back on the program. We appreciate your time. Thanks very much for being with us. Coming up next on Upfront, a laptop for every high school freshman in Wisconsin. It's a goal of Assembly Republicans, but what are the chances of a big fix for state roads? I'll be asking a top state lawmaker when Upfront continues.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.